and welcome to another episode of Don't Shit on the Bus. I'm your host, Adam Elmakias, tuning in all the way from Los Angeles, California for episode number 94 with my good friend, Nick Martin of Sleeping With Sirens. Thanks so much, Nick, for joining me today. I have known him for a long time, longer than I would say most of my other guests. Tanner Wayne, right up there with about the same amount of time, and they actually used to be in a band together. Fun little fact. But Nick is now in Sleeping With Sirens, and he is their guitarist and does backing vocals, screaming vocals. If you ever want to hear Nick scream, check out his old band called Undermined. But when I first moved to San Diego back when I was 20 or 19, I did a photography workshop, and Nick Martin's old band was nice enough to come and be the models for that workshop. So Nick, I just want to say thank you for helping me out all the way back then and continuing to help me out in current day in the form of joining me on the podcast. I learned a lot from you, man. And this episode was more of just a hang, more of a chat, a catch up. It's nice when I have people on here that I've known for a long time because we can kind of just shoot the shit. And I hope you as a listener enjoy the variety of the episode. I know sometimes we go full in and we got some learning to do. Sometimes you're just going to hang out and be the third person in the room. Also, if it looks smoky behind me and you're watching this video, you'd be right because I left some of that Santal wood burning a little bit too long. And now my place looks like it's on fire. But with that being said, I would like to thank our new patron this week, Paige. Thanks so much for signing up. And thanks so much to the existing patrons for your weekly contributions to make this podcast possible, for my continued learning and everybody else's as well, as we go on this adventure to, learn what we can about the music industry, more specifically the touring music industry. But we're not going to discriminate. We'll take anybody. How's it going, Nick? What's up? Welcome.
Good. I do want to point out one thing real quick before we even get started. I love that we literally live minutes away from each other, but you didn't want to do this in person.
Well, it's not that I didn't want to do it in person. It's that I did want to do it on Zoom. But the reason being, I have not done it in person yet. And I feel like COVID's made me too reclusive. Maybe I need to push myself out of those boundaries. I mean, we saw each other the other day from a block away and still didn't hang out.
That's true. That's very, very true. I get it, though. I get it with COVID kind of bringing that out in us that, I mean, I'm already a very reclusive, introverted person. So I get it.
Yeah, I will admit that I am probably struggling maybe more than most to get back to normal and still trying to remind myself what normal is as far as the health routine goes and a social aspect to life.
Yeah. Well, it's changed a lot, right? I mean, what was normal is not normal anymore. So I think we're all trying to figure out that new normal, which is weird.
Dude, it's so weird. And LA is really weird too, because I have different rules for living in LA than I have for living in other places as to what I will spend my energy on, because things exhaust me. And some days, I don't know, I just wake up and I'm I'm just I can't do, that's too much. That demands too much energy. I think I just have to stay home.
I think we're on the same page with that because I'm the same way. And I've had to learn as I've gotten older of how to recharge my batteries, my internal personal batteries, because being an introvert with, I guess, extrovert tendencies, so I'm in a band, figuring out how to recharge and having, being able to say, I'm not going to do shit today, or I'm not feeling it this morning. I'm not going to do that because my body is saying fuck you. Don't just take a break or don't do that. It's okay.
Okay. The thing I struggle with is where do I draw the line to being okay, I'm listening to my body and I'm okay, you're being an idiot. Get the fuck out of your seat and do the thing. You don't get to have I mean, we have the luxury of being self-employed. So maybe we can push that line a little bit farther than most, but I don't know how to tell when I'm taking advantage of that too much.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's part of the personal journey though, is figuring out finding that balance where you're okay, where you have to kind of kick your ass a little bit and just say, I need to do this. But I guess not pushing yourself that hard. So if, I think it's about finding a balance of that where you're not pushing yourself so hard where you're I have to get outside of my box today and I'm going to go do this. Even if it's something small, I think that it's the little baby steps as opposed to I haven't gone to the gym in a week. So today I'm going to go for an hour and a half and go as hard as possible. As opposed to just like, I'm going to go on a walk for
Have we talked about
15,
this
20
before?
minutes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think there's just that balance of don't push yourself too hard, but also don't, become so reclusive or in your own head that you start tripping yourself out a bit.
Yeah, it's like, all right, we both know that sleeping for 24 hours is too reclusive, and we both know that staying out for 24 hours is way too much. Where do we find the middle ground? It's not just as easy as sleeping for 12 and staying awake for 12. It's somewhere else. And I wish it was more clear. Somebody tell me. Somebody help me be an adult.
Yeah, I wish there was just like a manual for this. Like, what am I supposed to do? It's just different for everybody, though. And that's what it is.
Maybe we should go back to like 1990 before the internet really existed. And then all we'd know is like the one book that our dad gave to us or something. And it said, this is the way. And be like, okay, this is the way. And for as far as we'd be concerned, that was instead right now we have like 40,000 different people being like, this is what works for me. It's the best way. Also,
that's true. Yeah. Yeah, I think about that all the time, actually, of how it used to be without sounding like an old person. Like, this is how it used to be back in my day. Yeah, but I think that it was simpler. And I think that like once like the advent of social media and all of that, I think that just like changed everything for all of us.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. You know what else is crazy? Caffeine. You know what is wild? I drank a coffee today. I was like, I'm ready to podcast with Nick. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, Adam, you can't make any promises to anybody right now. You're too caffeinated. And that's like a rule I have to have. Do you ever feel that way where you like get really caffeinated? You hit up like 4 people and you're like, let's hang out and also create. I mean, I don't know. You have a coffee company, so I'm sure it like is a little bit different for you, but man, it gets me going sometimes.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. You get super jacked on caffeine. Whereas for me, my tolerance for caffeine is so high that I don't get that way. It takes an extreme amount of coffee for me to feel that like almost like the shakes and like I need to hit up 20 people right now. Like,
how many coffees do you have a day?
When I'm home, I stick to 2. So 2 cold brews a day.
Is that like 4 shots kind of? If I would think of it as like an espresso measurement. Okay.
Yeah, it's something like that. But on tour, it can get a bit more excessive. It can get to like 3 or 4 coffees a day.
I need a coffee after I wake up, before sound check, after sound check, before the show, and during dinner. It's going to be great.
Yes, that's honestly it. Yeah. And I'm that dude I'm that guy that I can do a double shot of espresso and go to sleep. So I can have it at the end of the night and just crash out.
I think you're broken. I think
honestly,
not,
you're right.
Not in an emotional way, just in a caffeine intake. I think you broke it.
Yeah, I definitely tested that through COVID because that's when I started my coffee company, Charlie Royal. I was getting...
We're hashtag sponsored.
Yes, hashtag sponsored. I was getting shipments of coffee from all these different roasters to do R&D for months. So I was literally drinking different varieties of coffees every single day.
Were you making noisy slurps?
When I cup, I make some. It's called cupping. But definitely making some noisy.
Sorry to interrupt you. I had to ask. Keep going.
But that was it. I think that I mean, my caffeine tolerance was already pretty insane before that. So it was just having a coffee company is just another excuse for me to just drink more coffee.
Yeah, it's kind of like, thank God it's like a socially acceptable. I mean, I hate even calling it a drug because it is, but like, thank God it's a socially acceptable one. But I mean, you see the same thing with like somebody who owns a weed company. They're like perma-stoned. They're just or they just can't get stoned. They're like, yeah, I own a weed company. And you're like, I can tell because you have a lot of money and you're super relaxed. And you live in California.
It's very true. But I don't feel like I have that high intensity caffeinated person that you would think owns a coffee company. I think I'm still pretty low key.
Yeah, I think you're chill. I mean, I've known you for a while. I've known you pre and post coffee company, and I think you've been consistently chill. So you're good.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. I know we have like tons of band stuff to talk about and music stuff, but I really, can we just talk about cupping first? That's like, is that okay? Like this podcast has no rules, and I know this is like your thing, but for people who don't know, it's called cupping, you said, when you taste coffee.
Yeah.
Can you I've seen it happen, and I want to tell you why it was crazy to me. I'm sure I've told you the story, but can you explain to me what it is and like how it works and what's the point?
It's like a very specific way to taste coffee, to taste different varieties and test your palate, essentially. But I'm definitely that person. I am the anti-coffee snob. I did cupping, but for the most part, like when I was starting Charlie Royal, I just wanted to drink it, and that was my taste testing. Was just drink the damn thing. Like you don't have to like when you do cupping. What it is that you open all the aromas. So you open up your sense of smell, but also your sense of taste at the same time.
Okay.
And then you're able to essentially taste like different notes. So that's when you taste like, things are floral or things are nutty or things
Fruity.
are chocolatey tasting. Fruity. Oh, yeah. So my palate is definitely, I would say, pretty vast, just over the years of trying coffee all over the world and then, cupping my own and doing all that. So, but I'm also that guy that like, I don't like to get too snobby with it and be like, well, this has notes of this and this has
Not
notes
like
of
a
that.
sommelier or something.
No. But yeah, cupping can be pretty like it's kind of douchey.
I don't want to be. I have what's called misophonia. I don't even know misophonia. I don't even know how to say it. I just learned about it in my adult life, but I've had it my whole life. Where like I really can't handle people chewing with their mouth open or making like it triggers this fight or flight response where it's like I'm enraged. Like I know what it feels like to be crazy because of that. And one time I was at, Coffee and Tea Collective in San Diego. Like, place is great.
Yeah.
But they were cupping during business hours while I was in there, like trying to work.
Drove you crazy.
I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is insane. And they're like going down like one at a time, down a line of like 5 different things, just one after another, making that noise. And I immediately left.
Were they spitting the coffee after tasting it?
I did not pay that much attention.
Even worse. I
was like feeling it. I was just like enraged. I was just seeing red.
What's interesting is I just saw an article pop up about that. However you pronounce it, misophonia.
Misophonia, yeah.
Misophonia. And my wife for sure has that. It's like if someone's chewing loudly or with like smacking their mouth while they chew or drink something, it triggers her. And what's funny is that I won't name names, but years ago we were at a label meeting for, I'm not going to say what label. And
you were doing music things.
There was someone very up in the staffing of this label, and we had a meeting, and we were in a room full of people all having catering, like having lunch together.
Oh, do they have chips?
They didn't have chips. I think they had sandwiches, and he was chewing so loudly that none of us could pay attention to the meeting. And I remember Justin, the bass player from our band, he was looking at me thinking that we were getting punked because it was so loud and
it was
obnoxious.
Like too much. Yeah.
It was so over the top that I thought for sure we were getting fucked with, but no, like this person just chews that loudly. It was jarring.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. And for people who haven't heard of it, it's not like it annoys you. It's literally like, I can't explain it. Like I've gotten out of Ubers before. I've quit playing like casual games of board games. I've stopped being in dressing rooms with people. Like it is like, I wrote about it in the book proposal I did because a band that I used to work with would chew really loudly with chips, a few members. And I would know that whenever we had chips in the dressing room, as soon as the bag opened, I was like, headphones are in, earplugs are in, or I'm out of the room. And then there was a while where they were on like a health kick and they didn't want chips on their rider. And I would go in the dressing rooms beforehand and I would just trash them. I would just throw them all away because I was like, this is great.
Or just chop all of them. Like literally
they're already bite sized. It's just, I can't believe that happened to you at a meeting. I would have been like, not for us. We're out. Like you're in your adult life and you still feel like this. What's not happening?
It was almost a deal breaker, man. It was pretty gnarly. It was pretty gnarly.
That's crazy. Well, I'd like to hang out with your wife just because I'm sure she doesn't hang out with people who are like that either. And she doesn't do it herself.
No, she doesn't. She cuts them out real quick.
Yeah, good call, man. Yeah, it's wild. I do have my earplugs with me in movie theaters for it too, which really helps. Okay.
Really?
I have like because popcorn noises like I can hear in the movie theater. And I have like the earplugs that are molded. And if I put them in, I can still hear the audio pretty well, but it cuts out all popcorn. However, the full service theaters with nachos, I'm out. I'm out. Like, I don't know why
Can't
that's a
do it.
thing. Dude,
It's too
nachos
loud.
at a movie? Are you kidding me? What is going on
I
here?
love nachos at a movie, man.
Yeah, that's very selfish
I
of you.
love it. I love it.
I mean, they are
We should go
good.
to the movies and see what happens, dude.
I would leave. I've left theaters. I'm not exaggerating. Like, it's like I've left theaters with my girlfriend. I'm like, we got to get a refund and leave. Hard segue.
I love it.
Complete Collapse came out yesterday. We're not very addy on this podcast, but I got to ask you, are you screaming on this track the whole way through?
On this one, I do have some screaming in it. Yeah, I do.
Okay. Because I don't know if like that, like you used to be in a band where you just screamed, right?
Yes. Yeah. The first band I was ever in, like that's all I did was just scream and cuss my ass off for many years. Yeah.
Shout out Undermined. And then I didn't know you were a screamer until like I did Warped Tour with you and you would go on stage with Chiodos and just like make me want to fight people. It was so sick. And I'm so happy you're still screaming. Do you miss it?
Yeah, I do. That's why, I mean, every set that we play, I'm screaming my ass off. Actually, that's why my voice is kind of hoarse, is because we played Blue Ridge last week. And getting back into the swing of things, it takes me longer now for my throat to kind of heal up a bit. And I think just because of COVID and not being on tour, that's kind of, I got to get back into the swing of things with my voice. But yeah, I love screaming.
Yeah, I like it too. I like that. I'm just picturing you guys like in writing sessions and like everybody's talking and the songs, you're like, this would be a really good place for a scream, and just getting them in there because I like it so much. You know
who really pushes it is Kellen. So when we're in the studio, he's like, Nick, you got to scream over this part. Nick, I just wrote this lyric, but can you scream it? Like he cool. Loves me like screaming over like his lyrics and his vocals. So he's always just like pushing me like, yo, get in the booth and just scream something.
It does sound good. Yeah. You're like a backing vocalist for screaming sometimes. Now that you say that, like that's what it's like in Complete Collapse. They're not necessarily like screaming parts, but you're screaming over Kellen's singing part or something like that. Yeah, because Kellen already has a great scream. Mm-hmm. Like he has an incredible voice, but his scream is top notch. But when him and I kind of layer that together, or I scream over his singing parts, it definitely adds like a nice touch. But I do have a lot of screaming on this record. I think the first song on our record that's called Tyrants, it's not out yet. It's Kellen and I going back and forth on the verses. So it's like the most screaming I've been on a song since I was in Undermined. That's sick. It's a heavy, crazy track. Yeah. People will be stoked on it. You're creeping your way towards frontman, but you don't have to like... I don't want to be a frontman ever again. Yeah. That's a lot of weight. Okay. When Zoom came out during the pandemic and everybody's like, oh, we can do video chats. Well, Skype's been around for like 10 years. Like I didn't think this was a new thing, but it is like to the level we're using it at now. I'm like, oh, this is a lot. Yeah, I get it now. I totally get it. Okay. How have you been in Sleeping with Sirens for 8 years? Wow. I'm always that guy that's like, I've been in the band for like 5 years. 6 years. Dude, I still think he was the new member, and that's like wrong, very wrong of me. But I'm just like, oh yeah, Nick, he just joined. Yeah. It's interesting that there are some people that view that but I've been in this band longer than most of the previous members. So yeah, like the band members who are in like the person you replaced had been in it less than you have now. Yes, that's exactly it. It's weird because my brain still doesn't compute that. Like I still feel like I am the new guy, which is weird. I don't know why. Well, and like with age too, like the years you have obviously at a younger age are longer than the ones you have at an older age. So when I was going back and looking at videos, getting ready for this, I was like, these songs came out 12 years ago. Yeah. What's going on? It's kind of wild. It's hard for me still to wrap my head around how fast, like when you're in this industry, time moves so quickly. And to think that I've been doing this for on and off for over 20 years, makes me like, I'm like, what? Like, where did 20 years go? It's difficult to wrap my head around sometimes. Yeah. Why do you think it makes time go fast? Or what do you mean by that for people who aren't in the music industry, or even if they are, maybe aren't in a band? I don't know. I think I guess specifically with Sirens, we've constantly just been on tour forever since I've been in the band. So for 8 years up until COVID, we had been touring nonstop. And there's just something about being on the road all of the time that
your sense of time is so different. You know, you don't in what I call like the quote unquote like real world. You know, we're so used to this 9 to 5, Monday through Friday kind of like work block.
Yeah.
Whereas in the touring world, every day is Saturday. That's why I would
Yeah.
say every day is the weekend. You're not thinking of, oh, can't wait until it's Friday and I've got the weekend. Like every single day is something. So you never have this concept of time. All of that is lost. Like when people ask me, like, remember the last time you were in Des Moines, Iowa, in this year at this venue? And honestly, I don't, because it all it all just blends together. And when you've been doing it for as long as I have, that blends even more so together.
Yeah.
And like when I was in my previous band, Drugs, and that band was only together for, you know, a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah.
That was all a blur to me too. Like I have, and partially probably because of like the partying and all that, but
Yeah. It's the coffee.
yes, the coffee. And looking back on Undermined and those years, like it's all just like one big like mushy like multiverse for me. It's very, very weird.
I wonder if that feeling exists for people who do lead, like, I would say like a more normal life, or a more like, you know, like just, yeah, normal, I guess is the right term, but I'm not meaning that in like a negative way.
Yeah.
But
no, of
a
course
more
not.
normal life. I wonder if it blends all together. I got to hit up some old people and ask them, you know, like some people who are like 70 or 60, and be like, yo, can you like, I don't know, how do you compartmentalize your life? Like, do you think of it in chunks?
Kind of. Yeah.
Are you like pre-music, undermined, drugs, joining sleeping, you know what I mean? Like, is there like, what's your chunks?
Yeah, I can. That's honestly probably like the best way to view like how I compartmentalize those chunks is like what band I was in
Yeah.
is like this era in my life. And it's because those are such big parts of me, and like a lot of the milestones that I've accomplished in my life has been through music. So that's how I kind of compartmentalize all of those different parts of my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was trying to think of my compartments as we were talking too.
Yeah, how do you do it?
Child, sentient, unawarely immature, awarely immature, and I think I'm now like 20. Pre long hair, bald, thinking I'm farther ahead in my career than I am, 30, and then now just being like, oh, life.
Honestly, I think we all go through that though. A lot of those
It's some
stages
normal
that
stuff.
you just explain, like I get.
You're not at bald yet, though. You're not there yet.
No, but the hairline's receding. I'm definitely getting. I'm gonna be 40 in December, so I'm getting up
Wow.
there, dude.
You and Vic the same grade?
Yeah. So Vic is. I'm 2 months older than Vic.
Yeah. He turns 40
Yeah.
next year. That's weird.
It is weird. And it's weird that him and I started our bands together in high school in his room, in Mike's room, in their house.
That's crazy. You both started each of your bands. What Vic was called? Wait, let me get it. Vic was called, I don't know. What was Vic's old band called?
Well, he was in Early Times, which I guess is like
Okay.
the first like inception of what is now
First
like Pierce the
iteration.
Veil.
Yeah, I got you.
And then my first band was Undermined.
Damn, you just started on Undermined?
Yeah, I was in like that was my first band. Mike was the drummer, the first drummer of Undermined. So we would practice. We would always practice first, I feel like, in his room for like an hour and a half, and then after us, Vic and his band would come in and they would rip their set. Like Mike was just a beast and would just. I mean, we were young, so he could just play for hours and hours and hours. But yeah, we started our bands together.
That's pretty cool. San Diego, man. I feel like I didn't exist, obviously, in your early days, because you guys are a little bit older than me, and I moved to San Diego when I was 20, and Vic's 7 years older than me. And I used to know his birthday because I used to use his ID, but I don't know it anymore.
Did you really? That's pretty awesome, dude.
Yeah, they paid me for a photo shoot with Vic's ID when I first moved to San Diego.
That
like,
is
here's
so
$200
awesome.
in a real fake, and then Vic had to go to the DMV, which that is worth a good amount of money. Having to go to
It
the DMV.
is. Well, I never knew that story. That's a really good story.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I do like that. On Warped Tour, people thought I was Vic. So I was like, there was like me, Vic, and like this dude from another band who all kind of looked vaguely similar.
You guys were all like brothers.
Yeah, it was really weird. And people come, yeah, anyway, sorry to talk about myself on the podcast, but that was
No,
like,
you should. I don't. I will. It's weird on podcasts because I don't want to just talk about myself. I'm also interested in knowing more about others too. So I want to know more about you too, dude, even though
Can
I've
you
known you forever.
imagine being a podcast host, but being like so oblivious that like you invite people on, but then they don't get to talk? Like you're like, yo, Nick's here today to listen to my stories. Can you
Well,
like the full send?
yeah. See, it's interesting because I listened to a podcast called Smartless.
Oh yeah, I know that podcast is like what a powerhouse.
It's insane, but they're all such strong personalities, all three hosts,
Yeah,
that sometimes they've been called out on social media before of like not letting the guests like talk more because
four
they
people.
just it's yeah. So they do four people total.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and they all. I mean, it's interesting because they shared their stories, outside of who it is that they're interviewing or talking to. But
Yeah.
people have had issues in the past where like guests don't really talk that much because they just like go into their own world. But
That's crazy. Four people is a lot. I mean, the max, if even if the guest is talking, 25% of the time, that's 15 minutes.
yeah, it's a lot of it's a lot of people. It's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Dude, that is a lot. I don't know how they do that. Are they in real life for those though?
They do Zoom as well.
Okay. That would be very hard. It's hard to read signals on Zoom a little bit more, especially when there's like, I don't know if they use like hand raising and they're like, I'm next.
Maybe they do. It's weird that they do Zoom, but they don't post any of their videos. So it's just all recorded, but they don't release the video. I don't know why that is.
Maybe they're going to charge a premium in like 3 years for it.
Maybe that's true.
Man, okay, yeah. So you're 40 now, which is crazy because I don't know about you, but sorry to start with that. But it's like when I was 30 or even when I was 20, every time I think of like the next 10 years, I'm like, oh, that's older. But do you still feel like not old?
Not at all. I think that maybe it's cliche. I think maybe a lot of older people say this, but like they've never felt younger. But I honestly really do genuinely feel that. And I think it's because like 6 years ago, I got on a health kick and started, taking care of myself, lost 40 pounds.
Respect. Oh, hell yeah. That's awesome.
And in that, I think I look back on my 20s now, and I can honestly say that I wouldn't want to go back to that. And I'm definitely healthier now than I ever was in my 20s. So I've looked forward to getting older now. I think when I was in my 20s, there was that dreaded, like, oh my God, I'm turning 30.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I turned 30, I was like, this isn't bad. And then by, like mid 30s and I was getting healthy, it was like, I feel good about it. I don't mind getting older. It doesn't like scare me or bother me. I think but everyone is different. And I think that aging can be a terrifying thing for some people, whereas I just embrace it. Like I can't stop aging, but I know that I can definitely take care of my body more, my mental health more. And that gives me some sort of longevity, and that like it puts me in a good place. That like makes me happy.
No, that makes sense. I really wish you would have said during that, I can stop aging. And I would have been like, thank you. Finally. He said I can't. And I was like,
I'm here to tell you that you can stop it.
Buy my book. Dang. No, that's great. I'm glad you found that. And something that, I mean, because you've been in the industry it's long relative to your life. It's not long relative to some people. It's very long relative to others. But for you, it's more than half your life, which is a long time. Has your outlook on being in a band and maybe the metric you lose to measure success within a band changed over time? And if so, like how?
It's definitely changed. And I think it's ever evolving even still. Yeah. But I think that now my metrics for success are very simplified as far as it's not about, I think that there was a time in my life where it was about record sales and it was about streaming numbers. And I don't care about that stuff anymore. Where now like my metric for success is just being happy doing what I do. And that kind of goes back full circle to like when I first started playing music, like when I first started a band. And I think through a lot of self-introspection and therapy, I've gone back to that of like keeping it really simple as far as what gratifies me and makes me feel successful. And that is just waking up happy doing what I do every single day. And like, and just having that simple joy of being on stage, with my best friends and just playing music and screaming into a mic. That is successful to me. And it's not about, don't get me wrong, like selling out shows and like people just, like just giving a shit about what we do, like means is awesome. It's
Yeah.
really cool. But at the end of the day, I keep it really simple. And it's just have fun doing what I'm doing. If there's ever a day that I'm not feeling that anymore, I'm not getting butterflies before we go on stage every night, then like I would question like why I'm doing it. But I'm fortunate that I'm coming up on 40. I know it'll be rough, but coming up on 40 and doing this for 20 years and I still get butterflies before every single show, that's like a great feeling. It means I feel like that tells me that I'm doing what I love and what I'm passionate about. And I'm very fortunate to find that, because I think a lot of people go through their lives not finding that.
Agreed. I think people are doing a better job of finding it these days. And I don't know about you, but like when I would tour with bands, even like I would say Sleeping with Sirens in, let's say like 2010 or 12, or, Pierce the Veil, like the days when the bands were kind of like, every show was bigger than the last kind of vibe. And it wasn't like a consistent thing. Oftentimes the like consensus was like, you would look at these other bands that were kind of doing it for a living that weren't really getting any bigger, but they were playing like the same shy shows, and people would be like, what are they doing? There's such a waste of time kind of. And I always think of Rise Against, but then you get to like be our age and you're like, oh, they just have families and they're killing it. And they're like the same size every year, but it's consistent. And they've like turned this into a lifelong career rather than being like a blip, a 2-year blip, which is kind of the goal.
And I think you're absolutely right. I think finding that consistency and like what that is super important as we get older. That's why I don't put that metric of success on like, are we playing bigger venues? Are we selling more records? Because where we've been at is pretty consistent and it's great. It's comfortable. Like none of us are like upset about that, and if things like took off more, awesome. But if they don't, like, that's okay too. And like we've, like you said, like we have families and there's things outside of music that also fulfills us. So like we're fucking lucky. We're super, super lucky and super grateful.
No, that makes sense. I lost my train of thought. Give me 1 second, because I did have a question I wanted to segue this into.
You're good.
I have notes.
Awesome.
I have notes.
Smart man.
Today's the first time where I wrote notes that were like, usually it's very, very listed. And I was like, I'm just going to jot like stream of thought, like write it down because it's Nick and I want it to flow like that. But then after we talk about something, I just bold it. So everything's bold. And I'm like, oh, this is just the thing. Oh, I know what I was going to ask. I was going to say, okay, you're 40 now. And I keep going back to age here, but it's a very interesting thing to me because, well, it's a new you've never been 40 before. I was wondering, is there an age where you're like, all right, I can't be in a band anymore? Like, does that happen? Like, is there an act? Do you have that in your back of your mind, like where that is, or is it going to be a feeling?
I think that when I was in my 20s, I was probably telling myself that anything past 30 is probably not probable.
Yeah.
So I could say right now, I can just do this for a couple more years. And then in a couple more years, I'm like, well, I've come this far. I could keep going. I think that like I can't throw a number on that. And I think that's super important that I don't, because I think that falls into, maybe this is too much deep thought on it, but I feel like that falls into these like societal norms that we're like raised on of you need to go to college and you have to have this job and get married by this age and have this many kids by this age. And if you don't do that, then, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think that just not having those boundaries or saying like, if I'm still doing this by 45, then I'm just gonna, I should just call it. Yeah. Because you just mentioned bands like Rise Against and other bands of that caliber that are definitely older.
Offspring, Rise Against.
Yeah.
Korn.
And they're still doing it. And they're having a blast doing it. Like we toured with Rise Against a few years back, and they have so much fun still. Like, and they were like the nicest dudes and just have so like, that's inspiring to like still be able to be doing it and still enjoying it. So putting an age on, like, I'm not going to do it past that age I feel like that would be a disservice to myself.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think is it hard for you? I know you entered this band kind of, let's call it, I don't know what to call the time, but I feel like a lot of bands have this point in their career where they go from like medium sized to massive and then they kind of level out, right? It's really hard to like ride that wave that you get unintentionally and make it happen intentionally afterwards. Is that like a hard, and again, I know this is unique for you because you kind of entered the band on the tail end of that, I would say. Is that kind of a hard thing to work with mentally or internally, or is that not even a thought? Like, hey, we were, bigger than we were, bigger than are now before. Does that matter?
It's not really a thought, but I can honestly say that that was something that I had thought about when I first started playing with the band. Because not to say there was a big backlash when I first started playing with the band, but you know, that was when Feel had come out, and actually at the time, Kellen needed a long break to be with family. So
Okay.
it's not that the band went downhill, but things things kind of like leveled out a
Yeah, leveled
bit.
out. I think that's a good way of thinking of it.
Yeah. And maybe there was a part of me that felt like I was like part of the reasoning for that.
Oh, like you were to blame?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I put some of that on my shoulders. But as the band has progressed and we've gone through more like ups and downs as a band, and like put out a record that almost like made us not want to keep doing what we were doing. And then like coming back from
What record
that,
was that?
like that was Gossip.
Gossip. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's not even just that it was the record itself. It was just like where we were all at that time. We were just like,
Yeah.
what are we doing, and having to kind of regroup and refocus.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood.
I think it's an afterthought now, as far as like those ups and downs, and if the band could or would be as big maybe as they were at one point. Like I don't even know how to like, guess this goes back to that metric of success. Like I don't even know how you measure that, because it's more than just like how big are the venues you're playing or how many records you're selling. I don't know. I feel like it just goes.
It's like a collective feeling.
Yeah.
And I felt kind of rude asking the question to begin with, because I was like, I don't know,
No,
but
you
I'm always
shouldn't.
interested in that because I've dealt with similar things in my career, and I know people deal with it in their life. And it's, especially in the entertainment industry, I will say, where like, it comes in waves. It really does. And it's crazy. It's cool to see other people go through it. And I wanted to just know how they handle it, because even if it's not a metric, you have to have thought about it. People have to like think.
Yeah.
It has to like cross your mind, I think.
And I think that drives artists and bands crazy. Like
Yeah.
when they become so hyper focused on, maybe a year ago they played at this venue and sold it out, and then they played
They're
again
at
next
Red
year, and
Rocks,
it's
and now they're at the Ogden.
yeah, exactly it. And then
Yeah.
it, I guess as artists, it's hard. It can be hard to internalize that and be like, well, damn, like maybe people don't care anymore or whatever it is. Like it's just, and because it is our art, and it's something that means so much to us. So I see where it can be difficult to not take that personally, or
Yeah.
that you feel like you're failing or you're not like as good as you used to be or something. I don't know. We've had to battle with that stuff previously, but I think that we're all collectively at a place of we're having fun doing
Yeah.
this, and there's no pressure of this. Like we sold this place out. I hope that we can sell it out again type mentality, because I feel like that just steers you in the wrong direction mentally. It can really just take your mind off of just loving what you do.
That makes sense. It's cool to know that you guys talk about it internally. I feel like that's another thing that, not only do bands level out, but they also kind of get on the same page. A lot of the times when bands start, they get big. It's like just a happy accident, right? They didn't like do these things intentionally, that now they're big. It's not repeatable. So now they're like, all right, we got to reel it all in and all be on the same page. And I feel like maybe after 2017 to now, the past 5 years combined with COVID, so 3 years plus COVID, that's kind of what you guys have been doing. And I know it involved, I don't know if it involved a label change, but it involved new management, new team, a new outlook, new members. And like,
Yeah.
once you kind of like checked all those boxes, are you guys like, all right, let's go. Like we're ready to go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We feel fucking great now. And that's
Yeah.
like not bullshit. That's not me like putting on a front.
It's not an accident
That's
either.
like everything is so good now.
Yeah.
But honestly,
Crumbling
we
in
are
the
at
background.
we're at a really, really like positive place. I think a lot of that, like you said, is that we do talk about real shit. And like I think more importantly, we communicate. I think for a long time, and this is like any relationship throughout your life, like if you're not communicating and that line isn't there, that you don't feel comfortable communicating, or no one wants to address like elephants in the room, that causes a lot of inner turmoil, the personal stress and everything that goes along with that.
Yeah.
And I think that we've done a great job over the years of really working on that and like communicating with each other and being open and being vulnerable. That has helped our band immensely, and like with being on the same page. And as you get older, like it's so important. If you don't have that in a relationship or with each other, it can be really, really difficult. And I know that from previous band experiences of not being able to communicate or feeling comfortable doing that, and always having this like walking on eggshells thing with people you're surrounded by every single day. It's the worst feeling in the world.
That makes sense. And are you guys like, is Maddie in the band?
Maddie is in the band. Yeah.
Okay. So everybody that I see in the photographs is like 1/5 of Sleeping Now. Is that how it is?
Yes.
4? Okay.
Well, there's 4 of us, and now we have Tony Pizzuti playing guitar with us.
Wait, who's Tony?
He was in The Word Alive.
Oh, I know Tony. Okay. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Then I maybe didn't realize that. Okay. So 4 plus Tony. On the back end, like, I know that you and Kellen do a lot of the interviews. I know that you guys are maybe the more like social people as far as press goes, but are you guys all very much 1/4 of Sleeping, or are there kind of people who are more the business people and the people who are just doing their instrument and the writing, or what's the dynamic like within the band?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think that everyone has their roles, but I do think now that even with Maddie, he's really good in social situations and doing interviews. So it's nice to have that. And Justin is like the funniest person in the world. So
he's out of his
great.
mind.
He's great in interviews too.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a good thing, guys, just to clarify. I know I jumped in and just said a thing, but keep going.
No, it's a great thing. But yeah, I think that we all have our roles. Like some of us are more involved with the back end business side of things. Some of us are more involved with like the merchandising side of things. There's some people that are more involved in like effective marketing techniques. And so everyone has like their roles, which is great because there's never too many cooks in the kitchen.
Okay.
There's just enough cooks that everyone is happy and people don't feel like they're not useful or unwanted. Like everyone has a vital role in the band, which definitely creates an amazing dynamic for us.
Group teamwork.
100%.
Okay, then I'm not going crazy because I just looked on your Instagram. Did Jack just recently leave the band?
Yes. Yeah, he recently left. He's been doing stuff with Jelly Roll now for a couple of years. He was doing a lot of stuff with him during COVID.
So he's like a live guitarist for Jelly Roll, because Jelly Roll is like a solo artist, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got a full live band. So Jack's over with them now. And yeah, and we've got Tony now, who's been incredible to have, and he's added amazing dynamic to the band. He's such a good dude, like the most positive dude ever, who's always just so grateful and thankful and just cares so much about his instrument and what he does. And he's just brought on a really, really great vibe to the band. Like everyone loves him.
Hell yeah. One thing that I feel very confident with is I'm never trying to like get somebody canceled on my podcast.
No,
or, like,
of course
in trouble or feel bad.
I know that. Here's a good segue of like getting started and where things go, and you have no clue of the relationships that you made in this industry. Yeah,
because you toured with Tony, World Alive, and now he's in your band. And that's what happened with Maddie. He was in Tonight Alive. Well, both the live bands. And you know, and I mean, you were in another band and now you're in Sleeping. So I mean, you meet people in the craziest ways and end up working with them.
Yeah, exactly it. And that was with even in my first band, exchanging shows, like trading shows with Aveneged Sevenfold when they were first started playing shows in Orange County in Anaheim. And then we would trade shows. So we got them their first show at Soma, and we played together. And then we'd play at the Chain Reaction with them and other venues like that when we were both on the come up. And it's crazy now. I haven't seen those dudes in so long, but it's crazy to think of over the last 20 years of the people that you meet and come across and where they've gone, and just the importance of those relationships. Like there's people that I met at the time with Aveneged that have helped me at various times throughout my career with shows and like getting work and getting jobs. So I can honestly say that it pays to just be a nice person, you know, and the people they meet along the way, they don't forget people that just genuinely care about what they do and love what they do. And it goes a long way. It's cool that.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Oh my God. He's drinking coffee, guys. It's happening. Oh man, yeah, it is cool how long you get to like be friends with people and how you can just like pick up where you left off. If you want, I'll just totally do the wrong social thing and I'll give you Avenged Sevenfold's practice space address and you can just show up. And I'm sure they would love that. And they would be like, oh, great. How are you? Why are you here?
Well, actually, I talked to Matt on Twitter somewhat recently because he's into the whole NFT thing, and I'm like super intrigued by it all too.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think Kellen has actually played golf with him a couple of times, so there's some like interesting Avenged crossover.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, it's so cool what bands know each other and what bands hang out. Like I'm always like, oh, it's not related to your music. You just work in the same industry, and that's cool. Like it's cool that everybody's just like, oh, we can hang, we can do the thing.
Yeah, it is really cool. It's really, really cool.
Oh man. Oh, okay. I wanted to say this. This is from like 10 minutes ago, but the saying is usually the elephant in the room, and you said
Yep.
elephants in the room, plural. And then I couldn't help but my mind just went to like a person sitting in the room with multiple elephants. Can you imagine? I know it's like so random, but it would be so weird. Just multiple elephants.
This is something I've always appreciated about you, and it's your brain. I love that in conversation, you get like the way your brain just goes to places. I've always just thoroughly entertained by you, dude.
Yes. Usually people would hide an insult in a statement like that, but you did not. It was actually a compliment.
No insults.
And I know you
no
will.
insults.
It's like, oh, are you being nice to me right now? Or am I too ignorant to realize you're being mean? Like, where are we at?
Genuinely being nice. Have we ever had guff or anything? Have you and I ever like not gotten along?
There's very few people that I'm aware of myself not getting along with, if that makes sense. I'm sure there's people who do not like me and people I do not get along with, but I do not know about it, if that makes sense. I am unaware and oblivious. I'm like, oh, that's just who we're friends. Yeah, cool. That's just how they are. It's not me.
I feel like you and I have always gotten along, dude. You're good,
yeah,
dude.
I agree. It'd be weird. Do you get in fights with people? I don't know. It's like weird to me. Have you been? I don't know.
No.
Not physically, just like.
It's been a long time. It's been a really, really long time.
Because you're healthy.
I think for the most part, I get along with people. I mean, I can honestly say there's probably some people within this industry that probably don't like me.
Yeah, is that weird? How do you deal with that? All right, I will admit, when I first started the agency with Thomas, my partner, we definitely have some people that I would never work with again. And it made me like, I operate on such a value-based decision making where like every decision I make goes back to my values. There's no like, it's just business excuse for me. They are one and the same. Like I cannot do bad things in business because that would be me doing a bad thing. Not everybody operates like that. How do you deal with that?
I don't. It's a really good question that I don't know.
But you're dealing with it. You've dealt with it. So you have to have a way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. If people don't like me, then it is what it is. God, I wish I could just like.
It's okay, I guess, is the best way to think of it. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to be like that everybody, and people have different ways of doing things that maybe you have opposing views on, and like that's it. I don't know.
If everybody likes you, then are you really being yourself? You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, by definition, I think it'd be like not inappropriate. It's just impossible to have everybody like you because the reality is some people don't like anybody, and that includes you.
No. Yeah, and I think that if people really go out of their way to be liked, that is even more problematic. And I know a lot of people like that.
Yeah, what does that look like?
But I know some people that just do everything they can to be liked by everyone. It makes them fake.
Yeah. You're not okay. Wait, I have a story. Can I tell a story about this?
Absolutely.
All right. I practice things on like a very personal level sometimes on like it's like sometimes comes to awkward situations, but I did notice myself being, I would call it like malleable, right? Depending on who I was hanging out with, I found myself adjusting my views just like 10%, just to like not have confrontation with people. And I recently visited my friends in Wisconsin, and I was at my friend's parents' place, and I know that they're pretty passionate about politics and voting, and I know their views, not because we've talked about them, but because I know where they stand and I can like kind of fill in the blanks. And me, myself, and I know people will disagree with this, and that is okay. I'm okay with being comfortable about it. But what happened was, they were talking about voting, and they were like, Adam, you vote, right? And I was like, absolutely not. And they were like, what? You have to vote. Like, that's your thing. And I was like, I do not do it. And usually I'd be like, oh yeah, I vote, because I didn't want to deal with the confrontation. But I was like, no, say you don't vote. Make these people like mad, but not mad in a way where they hate you, mad in a way where they'll explain to you why you should vote. And maybe you will vote next time because you've told somebody honestly why you don't vote. And if somebody was like, this is why you should do it, and it made sense to me, I'd be like, oh, that might be enough to change my mind. And I'm not saying voting is the only thing I disagree with people on. There's a lot of things, but I just try to like be honest with what I do so that I can get honest opinions from hopefully people who can do it in a way where like we don't not become friends or something afterwards. That was a long description. No,
but I think that's a really good quality trait that you possess, is being open to dialogues that maybe for some they would feel almost like defensive and like, well, don't come at me like that, or would cause like some sort of confrontation. Whereas I feel like you're a person who can have a conversation and not like be swayed on like how you feel or what your beliefs are, but at least for you to be able to like understand the other side of things that are reasonable to understand. I think there's some topics where I'm sure that if someone brought up to you, you'd be like, I'm not going to talk to you about this because what you're talking about is so asinine or left field that there's no rhyme or reason. But I think even with like what you're talking about with voting, I think that's a conversation that you can have and walk away from it, learned something. Yeah. I think that's a positive thing. But so you don't vote?
I have voted.
Okay.
To be honest, I had like the reason I don't vote, I have multiple, but it's like super immature. I will say that. But when I was 18, I was in what do they call it? Like a place where people go where they're not mentally okay, like a hospital, but a little bit more than that. And it was a lot of people who were not like with it at all. Like it was kind of like the movies, like those places where people go and like somebody freaks out and they like inject them with things that was where I was. It was crazy.
Really interesting. Wow.
And I was one of the only people there who like could have a conversation. Like there was some wild people, but it was 2000. It was the year I think Obama was up for election, and I was really excited to vote. And it's against the law, but they did not allow anybody to vote in there because the people who run the place, it's just one of those places, it's like the DMV. It's just not run well, right? You have the way it should be and they have the way it is. And the way it is, it's just not run well. That made me so mad. And I was so pissed. And it just sat with me for so long. And I don't know why.
Because it's your right.
And I felt so wronged because I was just turned 18. It was my first time I was able to vote. And I was pumped. And I don't know why. And that's, like I said, it's kind of immature and I need to get over it. But that was one of the main things where I was like, I'm never voting. They messed. I don't know.
Interesting. Do you think that you will vote coming up in the midterms?
I probably will. My girlfriend really wants me to vote. And half of me always jokes with her. I'm just like, tell me who you're voting for. I'm going to vote for the exact opposite. And then we'll just both agree to not show up. And it'll be like, but I know that's just another immature look. But yeah, I probably will.
Cool. Well, if you ever need some guidance or help with doing all that, I'm here to help because I helped register a lot of voters.
Okay, cool.
In the last election. So if you need help with any of that or some guidance in doing that,
I'm down, man.
Actually, I'm here to help.
As you're saying this, I did vote last. I did vote like months ago because I dropped a ballot at a temple around the corner and it was so easy. We did it at home and then just drove it there and dropped it off.
It's super easy. It's important to vote. It's important to vote. But I do understand.
We not disagree, but we did different things. And like after this, you're not going to be like, Adam, we can't be friends.
No, of course not. Of course not. We can still, I don't think even saying agree to disagree, but like we can still have like our views on things, but I'm here to help if you do want to do something like that. And if not, like I can't force you to vote.
All right, I'm gonna vote with Nick. We're doing it.
There it is. I like that.
This this podcast went absolutely nowhere I was expecting it to. Which is fine. I mean, it kind of did. Like we hit some checkpoints, but like I hope you enjoyed this. And we just really hung out, which was fine. But was this cool? Was this okay with you?
Yeah, it was totally cool. Yeah. I think like going into these things, I think like you said, you just had bullet points. I think if we would have just gone with the stock answers of like, so why did you start a band? And like, what's your favorite bands? And like, what got you into playing music? Like I do love talking about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also have like a level of trust and respect with you to just talk about like some deep shit, some real shit. That's important for me. That's something that I value. So yes, I love it. And
I was excited about that.
You're good at this. You're really good at this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I last week I had Joshua on, who was really cool, but my relationship with him was much different, right? Like I just met him. So I couldn't go deep because I didn't want to like, and I was like, I was trying to think like, what's unique about my guest this week? Oh, Nick, I've known him for longer than I've probably thought, like more than half my life, which is cool.
Yeah.
So thanks for going with me on that trip.
Of course, dude. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
It's not been more than half my life, but it's been pretty close. Shower shoes or no shower shoes? Because we do ask everybody that. What's your vibe on tour?
You know what? I don't do shower shoes, and it's pretty gross.
Boys.
It's pretty gross to say that though, because venue bathrooms typically not great. So I would definitely recommend to upcoming artists bring some shower shoes. But I'm a total rebel, and I don't do it.
So to sum up the podcast, screaming hurts your voice if you haven't done it in a while. Yep. Yes, vote, no shower shoes.
There it is. That's it. That should be the podcast. That's it. We can skip everything else and just listen. Yeah,
Connor, just cut. It's a 3-minute podcast. That'd be so funny. Can you imagine how weird it would be if I put out a podcast episode after having an hour-long conversation with somebody like this and it was 3 minutes and they were like, what the fuck?
Like, we're cutting out all the meat. We're just giving you the bullet points. That's it.
It's like one of those like clickbait, like BuzzFeed articles where it's like, you know, I just put it together. I don't even know what it's. Nick Martin says you should not vote because we cut like the shower shoes with the voting or something. He's so terrible. There's people like that, Nick. They exist.
That's fucked.
I know it is fucked. All right. Well, thank you for coming on here. I look forward to seeing you in real life. I haven't yet to see your wife in LA, and I have yet to meet your parrot. So these things need to happen. We live very close, embarrassingly close together.
Yes, let's hang soon. My wife is currently in Korea.
What?
But we'll hang when she gets back.
Why? For work?
She went on a 3-week trip on her own, and she's just doing the damn thing in Korea and working remotely at the same time.
I like your wife. That's cool.
Yeah, you should have her on your podcast, dude. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good to me.
She worked in the industry for a long time. You can talk to her.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Thanks, Nick. I'll catch you around. All right, so I finished the book proposal. I think I said that already. I've started sending it out, and now is the difficult process of like, I'll send it to some friends, and this isn't me passively calling you guys out. I appreciate it, and they'll send me back corrections, and I was like, thought I was done, but I'm really not. Now I'm realizing that like I finished the book proposal, but that really just means I have my first final draft. So I'm gonna send it out, but it's gonna be like an organism. Like it's gonna continuously grow and get better, and shout out to, my friends who have written me lengthy responses on how I can make it better. And it's hard, man, because I don't know if it's because I like skipped college education and I never really did any of my education, but like writing a paper is difficult. And then going back and reading notes and then applying them is very hard for me. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me, not to mention a lot of no's. I've already gotten a few not yeses. We'll put it that way. So people who still want to be friends but can't help me out, which I get it. So it's going to be a long journey to get a book published, but I think I'm ready for it. Or we'll talk in a few weeks and I'll be like, I'm defeated. Nah, I don't really get defeated. I don't know about you guys, but I go into the project being like, this is just going to happen. And I just have to like think that way. Otherwise, I just don't full commit, and it's kind of the same with the podcast. I was like, all right, this is just going to happen. And it's a struggle. It's sleepless nights. It's, wanting to give up vibes. And I'm sure you guys can relate. Just trying to get into the industry or working in the industry, there's definitely times where you feel like, all right, is this really working or am I just slowly failing? Kind of like my plants, I'm like, are they really living or are they slowly dying at a rate I don't notice and I'm doing a terrible job? So I think it's working. I think we'll get it published. I want it. I can't wait for every person who's a patron or a listener for a long time, past patron, like to have a copy of it in their hands, be on the road and be like, all right, this is helping me, but I'm going to meet this person one day. I'm going to pass it on to them. And I hope that's what the book can be eventually. All right. I just wanted to update you guys with that. Thanks as always for listening every week, and I'll see you next week.